Some ground is forbidden for a reason. We are about to journey to 27 places where the ground was never meant to be walked. From a tomb guarded by rivers of poison to an island ruled by the deadliest snakes on Earth. By the end, you will understand the powerful forces that seal these places off from the world. We will uncover why a sacred mountain has never been climbed, and what truly lies within the most secretive military base on the planet. What kind of place do you think should be left completely untouched? This deliberate separation between the sacred and the profane, the safe and the lethal, is a thread that runs through human history. Long before any government erected a fence, our ancestors were marking territory as forbidden. These were not places of simple danger, like a crumbling cliff edge, but realms where human presence was considered an offense against the natural or divine order. Ancient cultures might declare a mountain peak the throne of a god, or a dense grove the home of ancestral spirits. To walk there was to commit a sacrilege, an act of pride that risked unleashing chaos or divine punishment upon the entire community. The taboo was not just about personal safety, it was about collective survival. This ancient impulse finds a stark, modern parallel in the exclusion zones born from technological disaster. Here, the threat is not an angered deity, but an invisible, lingering poison that has saturated the soil. The ground itself has become a silent killer, and the barriers erected are not to keep out the unworthy, but to protect life from a landscape that can no longer support it. In both cases, the act of forbidding the ground transforms it. A simple forest becomes a sacred grove. A power plant becomes a monument to human fallibility. These places cease to be just locations on a map. They become powerful symbols of the ultimate limits of human knowledge and power. These ancient prohibitions echo through time in the legends of temples guarded by mythical beasts. Think of the tales whispered about the golden apples of the Hesperides, protected by a dragon whose very gaze could turn a man to stone. These were not mere bedtime stories, they were powerful psychological barriers. A community did not need a physical fence if the story of a curse was frightening enough to keep everyone away. This system of myth-based enforcement was remarkably effective, preserving places of immense spiritual significance for centuries. But why go to such elaborate lengths? Beyond the spiritual beliefs, these taboos served a profoundly practical purpose. A sacred grove declared off limits by a druid became, in effect, one of the world's first nature preserves. Its trees were protected from logging, its animals from hunting, its delicate ecosystem allowed to thrive untouched. Similarly, restricting access to a king's tomb or a temple's inner chamber was a way to consolidate power, ensuring that the authority of the ruling or priestly class remained unchallenged by the common populace. The ground itself became a tool for social order, and in doing so, these forbidden places gained a dual nature. They were physically real, yet shrouded in stories. The more a place was forbidden, the more it grew in the human imagination, transforming from a simple cave or hilltop into a legendary locus of unimaginable power and mystery. This ancient dance between the real and the imagined, the practical and the spiritual, is the very foundation upon which all modern forbidden places are built. Deep beneath a man-made mountain in central China lies a silent, underground city guarded by an army of clay soldiers. This is the tomb of Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor to unify China, and his final resting place is perhaps the most legendary forbidden ground in all of archaeology. While the world marvels at the thousands of terracotta warriors discovered in the surrounding pits, the emperor's central burial mound itself has never been opened. It is a sealed time capsule protected by ancient ingenuity and modern caution. Contemporary accounts from a historian named Sima Qian describe an extraordinary subterranean world, a microcosm of the emperor's realm complete with palaces and starry ceilings. But this replica kingdom was also a deadly fortress. The texts speak of mechanical crossbows, rigged to fire automatically at any intruder who breached the sealed passages. More fantastical still were the descriptions of vast miniature landscapes, with rivers and lakes not of water but of shimmering, toxic mercury. For centuries, these accounts were read as mere legend, an exaggerated tribute to a powerful ruler. Then modern science intervened. Geological surveys of the tomb mound have revealed a startling truth. The soil contains concentrations of mercury so high they dwarf the natural background levels. The ancient stories of mercury rivers appear to be chillingly accurate. This scientific validation transforms the tomb from a simple archaeological site into a lethally preserved monument. The Chinese government has made the deliberate choice to leave the central chamber undisturbed. The reasons are twofold: a profound respect for a foundational cultural treasure and a very real practical danger. Excavation could irrevocably damage fragile, organic artifacts like silks or wooden items that have survived for over 2,000 years in a stable environment. And then there is the poison, the potential for catastrophic exposure to mercury vapor for any archaeologists who break the seal. So the emperor sleeps on, his terracotta army standing eternal vigil, not just over his remains, but over the secrets we are not yet ready or safe enough to uncover. While the tomb of the first emperor is sealed by poison and time, other forbidden places are defined by a cycle of perpetual renewal. The Ai's Grand Shrine in Japan stands as a living testament to this principle. It is the most sacred site in the Shinto faith, dedicated to Amaterasu, the sun goddess from whom the Japanese imperial line is said to descend. For over 1,300 years, the shrine has undergone a unique and profound ritual known as Shikinen Sengu. Every 20 years, the main halls are meticulously dismantled and rebuilt on an adjacent, identical plot of land. This act is far more than simple maintenance. It is a symbolic rebirth. The sacred structures are transferred to a pristine new site, ensuring their spiritual purity remains absolute and untainted by the passage of time. The ground upon which the old shrine stood is allowed to rest and return to a state of nature, its sanctity preserved, while the new foundation is prepared with the same reverence. This cycle creates a profound separation from the modern world. The central grounds of the shrine are utterly forbidden to the public. Only the highest-ranking priests and priestesses are permitted to enter the innermost sanctuaries, with the chief priest or priestess always being a direct member of the imperial family. This inaccessibility is not meant to be exclusionary in a mundane sense, but to reinforce a fundamental spiritual boundary. The shrine exists in a state of eternal newness, a direct and unbroken connection to the divine that is deliberately kept separate from the profane influences of everyday life. The ground itself is not just forbidden, it is perpetually consecrated, an act of faith that has been repeated again and again for centuries. It is a place where tradition physically rebuilds itself, ensuring that the sacred remains forever just out of reach. But what happens when the ground itself is defended not by poison or tradition, but by the people who live upon it? In the turquoise waters of the Bay of Bengal lies North Sentinel Island, a place of dense emerald forest encircled by pale sands. This is the sovereign territory of the Sentinelese people, a community whose isolation is so profound and so fiercely guarded that they represent one of the last human populations on Earth with no contact with the outside world. For an estimated 60,000 years, they have lived on this island, their entire history and culture unfolding in complete separation from the currents of global civilization. Their message to the outside world has been consistent and unambiguous. Approaching boats are met with warriors on the beach who brandish bows and spears, their arrows aimed with clear intent to drive the intruders away. This is not a performance, it is a defense of a way of life. The Indian government, which holds nominal sovereignty over the Andaman Islands, has enacted an extraordinary law. It is illegal to approach within several nautical miles of North Sentinel Island. This legal barrier is not an attempt to hide a secret, but to enact a profound ethical principle. The Sentinelese possess no immunity to common diseases like influenza or measles. A single casual contact, a handshake or a shared object, could introduce a pathogen that would wipe out their entire population. The most dangerous thing we could bring to their shore is not a weapon but a common cold. Their isolation is their survival, so the ground of their island remains the ultimate forbidden territory, not because it is toxic or sacred in a way we understand, but because it is home to a people who have every right to refuse our world. Their defended beach is a stark reminder that some boundaries are not meant to be crossed, and that true respect sometimes means accepting a permanent no. The desire to see our deepest past can sometimes destroy the very thing we wish to preserve. In the quiet French countryside, a hidden chamber held a gallery of ancient masterpieces for 17,000 years, until a single accidental discovery brought it into the modern light. 4 teenagers chasing their dog into a hole found themselves in the Lascaux Cave, its walls alive with a breathtaking parade of aurochs, horses, and stags. The sophistication of the art was staggering, vibrant ochre and charcoal figures that seemed to pulse with life in the flicker of a lamp. It was an archaeological sensation, and for years the public flocked to witness this miracle. But the visitors brought with them an invisible plague. The carefully balanced ecosystem of the cave, which had preserved the paintings for millennia, was shattered. The heat from electric lights, the moisture from human breath, and the carbon dioxide we exhale with every word began to react with the mineral surfaces. A green fungus, dubbed the green sickness, spread across the walls. White calcite crystals, a destructive veil known as the white sickness, began to obscure the majestic animals. The very act of witnessing was causing the art to fade. A heartbreaking decision was made. In 1963, the original Lascaux Cave was sealed shut, its doors permanently locked to the general public. The ground where those ancient artists once stood, mixing their paints by torchlight, is now a sterile, climate-controlled sanctuary. Only a handful of researchers, under the strictest protocols, are permitted to enter for brief periods of study. We are left with a profound and painful irony. Our ancient ancestors created these works to be seen, to communicate across the ages, yet our modern presence is what threatens to erase their message forever. The cave floor at Lascaux is forbidden not by poison or law, but by the fragile nature of history itself, a place where our breath is a weapon and our greatest gift of sight has become a curse. A single bite from the golden lancehead viper can kill a human in under 1 hour. This is the stark reality on Ilha do Queimada Grande, a place so perilous it is known simply as Snake Island. Located about 90 miles off the coast of São Paulo, Brazil, this lush, rocky outcrop appears as a tropical paradise from a distance, but to set foot on its shore is to enter a realm ruled entirely by one of the most venomous serpents on the planet. The island is a perfect evolutionary trap. Isolated from the mainland for thousands of years, the snake population, with no natural predators, exploded. Their primary prey evolved to be migratory birds, which meant the vipers needed a venom of extraordinary speed and potency to ensure a bird could not simply fly away after being struck. The result is a toxin so powerful it can cause kidney failure, internal bleeding, and rapid tissue death, literally melting the flesh around the bite. With an estimated population of up to 4,000 snakes, the density is staggering, roughly one serpent for every single square meter of ground. The forest floor, the rocky crevices, the low-hanging branches, every potential footfall is a potential death sentence. This is not a place with a few dangerous inhabitants. It is a single, living organism of venom. The Brazilian Navy recognized this absolute biological threat and made the only logical decision: a total and permanent ban on public access. The ground of Snake Island is forbidden not by myth or law, but by the raw, unmitigated force of evolution itself. It stands as a powerful reminder that there are still corners of our world where humanity is not the dominant species, where the very environment has been shaped into a fortress that we are not equipped to enter. Knowledge itself can be a forbidden territory. Deep within Vatican City, the ground is not poisoned by chemicals or defended by weapons, but by centuries of accumulated secrecy. The marble floors of the Vatican Secret Archives bear the weight of history itself, a labyrinthine repository that stretches for an astonishing 53 miles of shelving. This is not a public library. It is the private memory of one of the world's oldest continuous institutions, and its doors are sealed to all but a select few. The very name can be misleading. The word secret does not imply a conspiracy, but rather comes from the Latin for private or personal. These are the private papers of the papacy, a collection so vast and sensitive that its contents could challenge long-held historical and theological beliefs. To walk these halls is to tread through 1,000 years of unsent letters, suppressed trials, and unedited accounts of world-altering events. Gaining access is a monumental task. A scholar must possess impeccable credentials and a very specific research purpose. Every application is scrutinized, and even if permission is granted, it is not a free pass to wander. Researchers are closely monitored, allowed to request only a few documents per day from an index that itself is not fully public. They sit in a designated reading room, their notes inspected upon departure. What lies on those endless shelves? There are papal bulls that excommunicated kings, letters from emperors pleading for favors, and trial transcripts from the Inquisition. There are accounts of miracles and denunciations of heresies. Some speculate about documents relating to the trial of the Knights Templar, or early astronomical findings that conflicted with doctrine. The ground here is forbidden not to protect a physical body, but to control a narrative. It is a place where history is not just stored, but carefully curated, and the privilege of walking its halls is a reminder that some of the most powerful barriers are not made of stone or wire, but of information kept deliberately out of reach. The Vatican archives guard their secrets with silence and protocol, but some forbidden ground is defended by a far more direct message. In the stark, sun-scorched expanse of the Nevada desert lies a place where secrecy is enforced with the threat of lethal force. Area 51 is more than a military base. It is a global symbol of state power and the absolute limits of public knowledge. For decades, the United States government refused to even acknowledge its existence, a silence that fueled endless speculation and cemented its legendary status. The airspace above it is a restricted military operations area, a no-fly zone where unauthorized aircraft are warned away or intercepted. On the ground, the perimeter is a technological fortress monitored by armed guards, silent motion sensors, and countless surveillance cameras. Posted signs carry a chillingly simple warning: the use of deadly force is authorized against anyone who attempts to cross the boundary. This is not a suggestion, it is a promise. While the base's existence is now an open, if reluctant, admission, its true purpose remains locked behind layers of top-secret classification. The official story points to the testing and development of advanced aircraft, like the famed U-2 and stealth bombers, machines so revolutionary they were mistaken for alien technology. This practical explanation does little to dampen the public's imagination, where the base is permanently linked to rumors of recovered extraterrestrial spacecraft and hidden extraterrestrial bodies. The truth is likely both more mundane and more astonishing, a continuous parade of human technological achievements so advanced they must be kept from rival nations at all costs. The ground of Area 51, therefore, represents the ultimate form of modern prohibition, one justified by the doctrine of national security. It is a place where curiosity is not just discouraged but physically barred, a stark reminder that some lines are drawn not by nature or tradition, but by the immense, invisible power of the state. Deep within a frozen mountain on the remote Norwegian island of Svalbard, a different kind of forbidden ground exists, one built not to keep us out, but to preserve a future we may desperately need. The Svalbard Global Seed Vault is a biological fortress, its entrance a stark, angular wedge of concrete and steel emerging from the perpetual snow, leading into the heart of the rock. Its purpose is profound, to serve as a backup drive for the world's agricultural heritage. But the long tunnels that spiral into the mountain lead to chambers where humans are merely temporary visitors. The heart of the vault is kept at a constant -18 degrees Celsius, a deep freeze that instantly numbs exposed skin and suspends time for the millions of seed samples stored inside. This cold is not an accidental byproduct of the location, it is the entire point. The ground here is a frozen ark, and the seeds, sealed in specially designed foil packages and stored on shelves within the cavernous chambers, are the precious cargo. Access is not forbidden, but it is strictly ceremonial and functional. A handful of times a year, gene banks from across the globe arrive to make deposits, adding new varieties of wheat, rice, or barley to the collection. They are the only people who ever see the interior, and their visits are brief, logistical operations in a space designed for permanence, not for people. The true occupants are the seeds themselves, sleeping in the dark and the cold, waiting for a day when a war, a famine, or a climate disaster might force a nation to request its agricultural inheritance back. This is not a place of danger or secrecy in the traditional sense, but its sacred ground is defined by its profound silence and stability. It is a monument to hope, built on the understanding that humanity's greatest treasures are sometimes those we deliberately choose not to walk among, leaving them to rest in peace against an uncertain future. A different kind of poison saturates the ground of Poveglia Island. Nestled in the Venetian lagoon, this small landmass appears from a distance as a peaceful, tree-lined retreat. But its soil tells a different story, one so grim that the Italian government has officially sealed it off from all visitors. During the darkest days of the plague, this island served as a massive lazaretto, a quarantine station where thousands of suspected victims were sent to either recover or die. The scale of death was so immense that local law insists the very earth is composed of a significant percentage of human ash, a macabre compost of suffering. Centuries later, the island's dark purpose evolved. A mental hospital was erected atop the ruins of the pestilence, and it is here that the legends deepen into true horror. Stories persist of a doctor who conducted brutal experiments on the patients, allegedly driven mad himself before leaping from the institution's bell tower. The building now stands as a decaying skeleton, its windows like hollow eyes, its corridors filled with the silence of abandoned trauma. The official prohibition against visiting is not merely about structural safety, it is a response to the overwhelming weight of the island's history. This ground is forbidden not because of a physical toxin, but because of a profound spiritual and emotional residue. It is a mass grave, an unmarked memorial, and a place where the echoes of agony are believed to have seeped permanently into the land. To walk there is not just to risk a collapsing floor, but to tread upon a landscape that has become a permanent scar on human memory. Human error can reshape the very earth, leaving behind a poison that outlasts empires. The Chernobyl exclusion zone is a testament to this terrifying truth. In the spring of 1986, a catastrophic accident at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant released a cloud of radioactive material across the surrounding landscape. The response was a desperate and permanent withdrawal. An area of over 2,600 square kilometers, a space larger than many major cities, was evacuated and sealed off from the world. The ground was no longer simply soil. It had become a repository for invisible, long-lasting danger. Isotopes like cesium-137 and strontium-90 settled into the earth, contaminants that will remain intensely hazardous for tens of thousands of years. While carefully managed tours now offer glimpses of the zone's eerie periphery, with its abandoned schools and decaying apartment blocks being slowly swallowed by forests, the true heart of the contamination remains strictly forbidden. The red forest, a tract of pine trees that turned a haunting ginger brown after absorbing a lethal dose of radiation, is one of the most poisonous places on the planet. The soil here is so toxic that disturbing it, even by simply walking, can kick up radioactive dust that clings to clothes and skin. This is not a place for casual exploration. The Earth itself has become a warning, a silent, enduring lesson in the consequences of technological failure. Nature is indeed reclaiming the cities, but it is a mutated reclamation, a stark reminder that some ground once altered can never truly be walked again. Even the ground surrounding the Emperor's sealed tomb holds a profound restriction. While the central mound remains untouched, the vast pits containing his terracotta army are active crime scenes of a sort, where the crime would be the destruction of history itself. Visitors to the site walk on elevated platforms, looking down into the trenches where thousands of clay soldiers stand in silent formation. This separation is not about poison or curses, but about preserving a miracle of color. When these figures were first created, they were not the uniform earthen gray we see today. They were painted in vibrant hues of red, green, purple, and blue, a lifelike army rendered in stunning detail. The tragedy is that this paint, once sealed for millennia in a moist, stable environment, is incredibly fragile. The moment a warrior is unearthed and the air touches its surface, the lacquer beneath the pigments begins to curl and flake off, taking the color with it forever. The transformation happens in a matter of minutes. To combat this, archaeologists work within tents that cover entire sections of the pit, their hands moving with painstaking care. They wear full-body protective suits and use delicate tools, sometimes applying preservatives the instant a new fragment is revealed. The ground of the excavation is a sterile, controlled environment, a world away from the public walkways just meters above. For us, that ground is as forbidden as the tomb itself, not by law, but by the urgent need to save what little color remains from the very air we breathe. The fragility of color on a terracotta soldier finds a parallel in the sacred resonance of a rock surface. In the heart of Australia, the massive sandstone monolith of Uluru rises from the desert floor, a breathtaking formation that glows fiery red at dawn and dusk. For tens of thousands of years, the Anangu people have been the traditional owners of this land, and to them, Uluru is not a tourist attraction or a challenge to be conquered. It is a living text of their spirituality, where every crevice, waterhole, and fissure is part of a creation narrative known as Tijukurpa. These are the stories of ancestral beings who formed the world, and the paths across the rock are the physical traces of their journeys. For the Anangu, the specific path used for climbing was a sacred men's journey, a route of immense cultural importance that was never intended for recreational use. For decades, a painful contradiction played out on its slopes. Tourists, drawn by the sheer scale of the rock, were permitted to climb, following a white line painted on the stone. They scrambled up a chain-linked path, many unaware that each step was a profound act of trespass in the eyes of the people for whom this place is the center of the universe. The Anangu repeatedly and respectfully asked visitors not to climb, explaining that it caused them great sadness and distress. They were not just protecting a physical space, but a spiritual one, where the ground itself is imbued with the essence of their ancestors. Finally, in October 2019, their plea was answered. The climb was permanently closed. The decision was a monumental act of cultural restoration, a return of sovereignty over a sacred landscape. The ground on top of Uluru is no longer a destination for a photograph. It is now a place solely for the ancestral spirits, a realm where the wind and the silence carry the weight of stories 60,000 years in the making. This was not the closing of a trail, but the opening of a deeper understanding, a recognition that some ground is not meant for recreational footsteps, but for spiritual reverence. That same philosophy of deliberate stillness governs the inner sanctum of the Svalbard vault itself. Beyond the iconic entrance, a long, descending tunnel burrows deep into the mountain's permafrost, leading to 3 separate seed chambers. These are the heart of the operation, and their access is the definition of control. Each chamber is sealed behind a series of immensely robust, blast-proof doors, designed to withstand everything from natural disasters to direct impacts. The environment within is not just cold, it is a constant, deep-freeze desert, maintained at -18 degrees Celsius to keep the seeds in a state of suspended animation for centuries, if not millennia. The ground here is not soil or rock, but the cold, metal shelving that holds the future of global agriculture. Row upon row of neatly organized boxes, each containing hundreds of sealed foil packets, form a silent, frozen library of genetic diversity. Human presence is not just minimized, it is treated as a disruption. The vaults are monitored almost entirely by remote sensors, with data on temperature and humidity streaming to officials in Norway and beyond. The only time a person ever walks across this metallic ground, their breath-forming clouds in the frigid air, is during one of the rare, meticulously scheduled deposit ceremonies. Representatives from gene banks around the world arrive to add their precious boxes to the collection. Their visit is brief, logistical, and solemn. They are interlopers in a sanctuary built for dormancy. The moment they leave, the heavy doors seal shut, and the profound silence returns. This is a place where human activity is the anomaly, a fleeting interruption in a long-term preservation strategy that spans generations. The ultimate security for our food supply is found not in constant vigilance, but in absolute frozen quiet. Deep in the emerald heart of the Amazon, the law of the land is rooted in silence. The Brazilian government has officially demarcated vast, uninterrupted territories as protected homelands for indigenous peoples in voluntary isolation. From the air, these areas are indistinguishable from the endless sea of green canopy, but they are sanctuaries as inviolable as any walled fortress. The ground beneath that canopy is not merely soil and root, it is the living room, the hunting ground, and the spiritual center of communities that have made a conscious choice to remain apart from our world. This separation is not born of ignorance but often of a painful history, a cultural memory of violence, enslavement, and disease brought by outsiders. Their isolation is a form of self-preservation, a hard-won refuge from a globalized world that has for centuries meant them only harm. To deliberately walk upon that ground is not an adventure, it is a profound transgression. It violates a national law designed specifically to prevent cultural extinction. The greatest danger is invisible, carried in a simple cough or a common cold virus. These tribes possess no immunological defenses to the common illnesses that course through our global population. A single encounter, a piece of gifted clothing, or even the air we exhale could introduce influenza or measles, pathogens capable of wiping out an entire community in a matter of weeks. The defended ground of the Amazon is therefore a two-way shield, protecting the tribes from our microscopic world and protecting us from the moral catastrophe of being the cause of their final chapter. It is a place where the most respectful act is to turn around and walk away, leaving the forest floor to those for whom it is the entire universe. The ground can burn with a chemical fire. In the highlands of Java, the Kawa Ijen volcano holds a lake of breathtaking and deceptive beauty, its waters shimmering with an ethereal turquoise blue. This color is not a sign of purity but a warning. It is the largest acidic crater lake on the planet, a cauldron of sulfuric acid with a pH lower than that of battery acid. The very air around it is a poison, thick with choking plumes of sulfur dioxide that sting the eyes and sear the lungs. This is not a landscape that simply tolerates human presence, it actively rejects it. The ground near the water's edge is a treacherous crust, unstable and prone to collapse into the lethal brew below. A single misstep, a single splash of that turquoise water would mean instant catastrophic burns. And yet, within this apocalyptic setting, a stark human drama unfolds each day. Men known as sulfur miners climb into the crater, braving the toxic fumes with little more than wet cloths held over their mouths for protection. They hack solid sulfur from the volcanic vents, carrying back-breaking loads up the steep crater walls for a meager wage. Their existence highlights the brutal distinction of this forbidden ground. The miners tread a narrow, perilous path, a calculated risk born of economic necessity, but the lake's immediate shoreline, the very source of the fumes they harvest, remains an absolute boundary. It is a place where the planet's raw, corrosive power is on full display, a natural laboratory where the rules of survival are rewritten by extreme chemistry. To walk there without purpose or protection is not an adventure, it is a death sentence. Stone jars the size of cars stand silent on the high plateau of Laos. These ancient vessels, numbering in the thousands, are scattered across the landscape as if left behind by forgotten giants. Their origins are a riddle from the Iron Age, with theories suggesting they were used for burial practices, perhaps to hold bodies or to store rice wine for massive funeral feasts. Yet the greatest mystery is not what lies inside them, but what lies beneath the ground around them. While some cleared areas allow visitors to walk safely among the jars, the vast majority of the plain is a forbidden zone, sealed off by a modern curse of metal and explosives. During the Vietnam War, this region endured one of the most intense aerial bombardments in history, leaving the Earth saturated with millions of cluster bombs, mortars, and other unexploded ordnance. These dormant weapons are now half buried in the soil, hidden by grass and erosion, waiting for a misplaced foot or a farmer's plow. This makes the Plain of Jars a deeply contradictory place, a site of immense archaeological value that is also a lethal, open-air graveyard of modern conflict. The work of uncovering the past is now inextricably linked with the work of clearing the present of death. Specialized demining teams, moving with painstaking slowness, must secure every square inch before archaeologists can even begin to study the jars. Each new section they clear is a small victory, reclaiming a fragment of ancient history from the shadow of a modern one. Here, the ground is forbidden not by a spiritual taboo, but by the brutal, tangible legacy of war, a place where history and hazard are permanently entangled. The debate over the Yonaguni monument hinges on a single, profound question. Was this landscape shaped by human hands or by the blind force of nature? On one side, the sharp, 90-degree angles and seemingly perfect steps look unnaturally precise, as if cut by tools. There are twin monoliths that appear to face each other across a wide plaza, and a massive platform that resembles a stage or altar. Could this be the remnant of a city, perhaps a Japanese Atlantis swallowed by the sea at the end of the last ice age when rising waters consumed vast stretches of coastline? The alternative explanation is just as compelling. Geologists point to the natural fracturing of sandstone, which can split along straight plains due to tectonic shifts. The powerful currents themselves, they argue, could have carved and smoothed these features over millennia, creating a spectacular, yet entirely natural, masterpiece of erosion. This is a mystery you cannot solve from the surface. To even approach an answer, you must descend into a challenging and unpredictable environment. The monument lies in deep water, where the pressure is immense and the visibility can change in an instant. But the primary danger is the current, a relentless, surging force that can sweep a diver away from the site or dash them against the ancient rock. This is not a gentle swim through a coral reef. It is a technical dive for experts only, a journey to a place where the very act of observation is a physical struggle. The ground here is a submerged enigma, a lost piece of the world that demands we risk everything just to ask it a question. For thousands of years, the sheer mass of the Great Pyramid has guarded its deepest riddles. While visitors today can walk the cramped passageways and stand in the Granite King's chamber, they are merely tracing a pre-approved path through a colossal labyrinth. The true heart of the structure remains hidden, sealed away behind tons of limestone. Modern technology, however, has given us a kind of X-ray vision. Using muon radiography, a technique that tracks cosmic particles as they pass through solid matter, scientists have mapped the pyramid's density. Their scans revealed something astonishing, a vast cathedral-like void situated directly above the Grand Gallery. This empty space, now called the Scan Pyramid's Big Void, is longer than a school bus and has been isolated from the known passageways for millennia. It is a room without a door, a deliberate architectural secret. Was it a construction gap to relieve pressure from the gallery below, a hidden chamber containing ritual objects, or something else entirely? The void represents a new category of forbidden ground, one defined not by poison or force, but by pure, impenetrable geometry. Its floor has never felt a human foot, and its silence has never been broken. It is a secret the pyramid is not yet ready to surrender, a reminder that even our most studied monuments can hold empty spaces full of unanswered questions. Deep beneath the Mexican desert, a mountain hides a chamber that feels less like a cave and more like an alien geode. This is the Naica Crystal Cave, a pocket of the planet where the very process of creation became a weapon. For hundreds of thousands of years, mineral-rich water, superheated by a magma chamber below, filled this space. The water was saturated with gypsum, and in the absolute stillness and constant, blistering heat, the molecules arranged themselves into monumental forms. The result is a forest of selenite crystals, the largest in the world, some longer than a school bus and thicker than an ancient tree trunk. They stab from the floor, walls, and ceiling in chaotic, beautiful spears, a labyrinth of sharp, transparent stone. But to stand among these giants was to stand in an oven. The temperature in the cave was a lethal 58 degrees Celsius, with humidity so close to 100% that the air was essentially a hot, thin soup. Breathing felt like drowning in a furnace. The human body has no defense against such conditions. Without a specialized cooling suit, which circulates ice water through tubes against the skin, you would overheat in a matter of minutes. Your sweat would fail to evaporate, your core temperature would skyrocket, and heat stroke would lead to organ failure and death. The ground itself was a treacherous climb over slick, glassy surfaces, where a single misstep could mean a deep, bleeding gash. This was a fortress built by geology itself, where the air was a wall and the floor was a bed of knives, protecting its crystalline treasures not with poison or guards, but with a climate from another world. The summit of Monk's Mound has not felt the weight of a paramount chief for over 700 years. This colossal earthen pyramid, rising 100 feet above the Illinois floodplain, was once the absolute center of a city that rivaled London in population. From its peak, a powerful ruler would have looked out over a sprawling metropolis of 50,000 people, a bustling landscape of plazas, neighborhoods, and thousands of other mounds. That wooden palace, the seat of government and religion, is long gone. What remains is the earth itself, a man-made mountain holding its secrets tightly. The ground at the summit is not merely dirt, it is a fragile, layered archive. Every grain of soil holds clues to the daily rituals, the political structure, and the ultimate collapse of the Cahokian civilization. Uncontrolled footfalls are not just a nuisance, they are an act of historical vandalism. The pressure from a single shoe can compact the soil, destroying the subtle stratigraphy that archaeologists use to date structures. A careless step can crush a fragment of centuries-old pottery or scatter the evidence of a post hole that marked the outline of a sacred building. This is why public access is so carefully managed today. Visitors are welcome to climb the massive staircase to a viewing platform just below the true summit, but the apex itself is cordoned off. You can stand almost at the top and gaze across the same vast expanse the ancient chief once surveyed, but you cannot tread on the most sacred ground. It is a compromise between public access and permanent preservation, a recognition that some soil is too precious to be walked upon freely. This protected peak is a monument to a forgotten American metropolis, a reminder that the most profound history is sometimes buried just beneath our feet, waiting silently for us to learn how to listen. That same principle of hallowed ground extends to the deep ocean floor, where the most famous shipwreck in history lies in perpetual darkness. Resting at a depth of 12,500 feet on the North Atlantic seabed, the scattered remains of the RMS Titanic are more than a historical site. They are a mass grave for over 1,500 souls. This is not an environment that tolerates visitors. It actively resists them with overwhelming physical force. The pressure at that depth is a crushing 400 times greater than at the surface, a force that would instantly implode a standard submarine. The temperature hovers just above freezing, and there is no light, only an absolute, eternal blackness broken only by the artificial glow of a submersible's lamps. Reaching the wreck requires a vehicle that is essentially a hollow metal sphere, engineered to withstand forces that feel almost otherworldly. Even with this technology, the journey is a perilous descent into a realm of extreme fragility. The ship itself is being consumed by iron-eating bacteria, slowly crumbling back into the elements. This delicate decay is part of why the site is now protected by an international agreement as a memorial. Salvaging artifacts is heavily restricted, not because the objects are not fascinating, but because removing them is akin to disturbing a tombstone. The silt that blankets the debris field is a soft, final shroud over a profound human tragedy. Every visit by a submersible is a carefully considered event, a solemn pilgrimage of remembrance and science. The pilots maneuver with a hushed reverence, their robotic arms used not for plunder but for gentle study. The ocean floor here is a forbidden landscape of both technological triumph and profound loss, a place where humanity is only a fleeting, respectful guest in a silent, underwater cathedral. The architecture of fear can be built from code and melody. In the pixelated world of the original Pokémon games, Lavender Town stands as a digital memorial, a place where the music itself became the stuff of legend. The story spread through playground whispers and early internet forums, a chilling urban myth claiming the town's soundtrack was more than just unsettling. It was said to contain specific, high-pitched frequencies, inaudible subliminal tones that targeted the developing brains of children. The legend warned of psychological distress, of headaches and nightmares, and in its most extreme and darkly sensational versions, it was even linked to incidents of self-harm among young players. There was no glitch in the actual cartridge, no malicious code planted by the developers. The danger was entirely a phantom, born from collective imagination. Yet its power was undeniable. For a generation of players, Lavender Town transformed from a simple in-game location into a psychologically forbidden space. The act of entering the town, of hearing that piercing, repetitive melody, became an act of transgression. You were not just walking your character through a graveyard for digital creatures. You were stepping into a glitch in reality itself, a place the legend insisted was not meant to be visited. This phenomenon reveals a profound truth about human psychology. We do not need physical poison or armed guards to feel that a place is off limits. A compelling narrative alone can erect an invisible barrier, making the ground beneath our feet, whether real or virtual, feel treacherous. The town's pixelated paths became a cautionary tale, proving that the most effective walls are often the ones we build inside our own minds. Velvet ropes trace the boundary of a vanished world. In the Queen's bedchamber at the Palace of Versailles, tourists gaze upon a scene of breathtaking opulence, a room swathed in silk and gold leaf where history pivoted on a whisper. Yet their feet are confined to a designated path, for the intricate parquet floor that radiates from the sumptuous bed is a forbidden territory. This is not a space closed due to structural danger or a curse, but to protect something far more fragile, the delicate ghost of a monarchy. The silks on the walls are centuries old, their colors vulnerable to fading from the light and the oils on human hands. The woven threads of the carpets and the polished wood of the floor would be worn to dust by the shuffling of millions of feet. This ground was once the private stage for queens like Marie Antoinette, a space where she gave birth in front of a court audience as royal protocol demanded. Now that same floor holds its breath, preserved exactly as it was the day the old world ended. The prohibition here is a quiet act of defiance against time itself, a promise that the physical texture of history, the very boards that supported the weight of empire, will not be erased by the curiosity of the future. It is a room where you can look but you cannot touch, a constant reminder that some distances, even in a crowd, can never truly be crossed. The Earth's crust feels dangerously thin at the edge of the boiling lake of Dominica. This is not a placid body of water, but a flooded fumarole where the planet's inner fury brews just below the surface. Located in the heart of Morne Trois Pitons National Park, it is the second largest feature of its kind on Earth, a vast grayish-blue cauldron perpetually shrouded in a blanket of steam. The water does not merely simmer, it churns with a rolling, violent boil, heated by superheated gases rising from a magma chamber deep below. The journey to reach it is a grueling trek through a primal landscape, a hike that serves as a natural filter for the unprepared. But the final approach is where the true danger begins. The ground surrounding the lake is a treacherous, unstable crust. The earth can feel hot to the touch, and thin, brittle sections might give way to scalding mud or vents suddenly releasing plumes of toxic hydrogen sulfide gas. There is no stable shoreline, only a volatile boundary where the elements of rock, water, and air are in a constant, violent negotiation. This is a raw, unfiltered display of geothermal power, a place that makes you acutely aware that you are standing on the lid of a pot that is perpetually on the boil. It is a boundary not meant for crossing, where a single misstep could plunge you into a natural engine of unimaginable heat. The silence of the frozen vault is broken only by the soft hiss of a door seal releasing. On a day designated months in advance, a small procession enters the long tunnel, their breath forming thick clouds in the frigid air. These are the curators from gene banks in Syria, or Mexico, or the Philippines, each carrying a sealed box that represents a unique strand of agricultural life. The journey to this point has been one of extreme diligence, with the seeds dried and packed in specialized 4-ply foil envelopes to survive for centuries. Before they even approach the final door, the boxes must pass through a series of security and logistical checkpoints, their contents and paperwork meticulously verified. This is not a delivery, it is a formal ceremony of safekeeping. Then, the innermost blast-proof door swings open, and for a few hours, the metallic floor of the vault itself becomes a pathway. The curators carry their boxes to the designated shelves, sliding them into place among the hundreds of thousands of others. In this moment, the ground is no longer forbidden. It is the most active and purposeful ground on the planet, a direct conduit for securing the future of human civilization. The people walking here are not trespassers, they are guardians performing a sacred, temporary duty. Their footsteps are quiet, their movements economical, as if they are visitors in a library where the books are asleep. Then, just as methodically as they arrived, they depart. The heavy doors close with a resonant thud, the locks engage, and the hum of the cooling system reclaims its dominion. The brief, vital interruption is over. The ground returns to its intended state of absolute stillness, the new additions joining the silent multitude in the cold and the dark, their presence a quiet promise against the uncertainty of tomorrow. The ultimate forbidden ground may not be poisoned or patrolled but revered. In the remote highlands of Tibet, the majestic, symmetrical peak of Mount Kailash pierces the sky, its permanent snowcap glistening like a brilliant white pyramid. For over 1 billion followers of Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, and the ancient Bon faith, this is not merely a mountain. It is the literal axis of the universe, the abode of powerful deities like Shiva for Hindus and a site of supreme enlightenment for Buddhists. This profound, shared sanctity has accomplished what no law or physical barrier could ever achieve with such absolute finality. The summit of Kailash has never been climbed. This is not for a lack of opportunity or technical challenge. As skilled mountaineers have long eyed its slopes, the mountain remains untouched for a single, powerful reason: a global consensus of respect. Both the Chinese government, which administers the region, and the government of India, from which many pilgrims journey, have formally and consistently refused to issue any climbing permits. They recognize that to place a foot upon the summit would be viewed by millions not as a triumph of human spirit, but as a profound desecration, an act of spiritual violence against the very heart of their faith. The act of climbing itself is seen as an arrogant attempt to conquer the divine, to subordinate a god's home to human ambition, so the peak remains eternally pristine, a silent, majestic monument to the power of belief. Its inviolate summit teaches a humbling lesson that some mysteries are not puzzles to be solved, but sacred truths to be honored from a distance. The final frontier of forbidden ground was not sculpted by nature, but built by human hands. It lies within the concrete containment dome of a nuclear power plant, in the pressurized heart of the reactor vessel itself. This is the core, a place of pure, concentrated physics where a controlled atomic chain reaction generates immense power. Imagine a massive steel cylinder packed with long, slender fuel rods, each filled with pellets of uranium. These rods are arranged with geometric precision, separated by a moderator material that slows down neutrons to sustain a delicate, self-perpetuating dance of splitting atoms. The energy released is staggering, but it is the invisible byproduct that makes this ground utterly off-limits. The radiation field inside an active core is so intense it would deliver a lethal dose in a fraction of a second. There is no heroic sprint through this chamber, no momentary exposure. The very air inside glows with an invisible, deadly light. Human entry is not just forbidden, it is a physical impossibility without an entire building acting as a shield. Every action, from inserting a control rod to checking a sensor, is performed by remote-controlled machinery, with operators watching from behind layers of leaded glass and concrete. Even when the reactor is shut down for refueling, the ground remains hostile. The spent fuel rods are still ferociously radioactive, emitting particles that can penetrate flesh and bone. The technicians who perform these intricate tasks follow protocols of breathtaking precision, their work monitored by a symphony of alarms and dosimeters. A single misstep, a miscalculation in the handling of this atomic fire, could disrupt the balance and unleash consequences that resonate far beyond the reactor walls. This is the ultimate transformation of Earth, where we have taken the fundamental stuff of the universe and concentrated it into a power source so potent that we can only approach it through layers of robotic proxies. The reactor core stands as a monument to our ambition, a place where we harnessed a star, only to find the ground at its heart forever barred to our footsteps. From the poison rivers of an emperor's tomb to the silent, frozen ark in a Norwegian mountain, this journey across 27 forbidden places uncovers a profound pattern in the human story. We do not simply avoid danger, we create boundaries for protection, for reverence, and sometimes out of pure necessity. These grounds are far more than coordinates. They are powerful mirrors reflecting our deepest beliefs, our most costly mistakes, and our enduring respect for forces beyond our control. They teach us that mystery and power still exist in corners of the world where our presence is an intrusion. In recognizing these limits, we gain a deeper understanding of our own place, our ambitions, and our responsibilities. This exploration is a call to honor the lines drawn by nature, by culture, and by history. If the secrets of these untouched places have captured your imagination, subscribe for more journeys into the heart of history's greatest enigmas. We would love to hear which of these forbidden sites intrigued you the most, so share your thoughts in the comments below.